Hello, North Central Washington, and welcome to Networked. Every year, our nonprofit, NCW Tech Alliance, hosts the annual Innovator Awards to celebrate the drive, passion, and spirit of innovators in our region. This past year, our 20th anniversary, we had the honor of recognizing Legacy Innovators for their exceptional vision and leadership in technology, entrepreneurship, and STEM education. Joining me in the studio today are two Legacy Award recipients, Doug Merrill and Andrew Metcalfe, or Andy Metcalfe as he goes by. Doug was awarded for his innovations in STEM education. His creativity in the classroom is exceptional, and he received his first Innovator Award in 2013. His students have gone on to make incredible accomplishments, not only in the classroom during their time at Wenatchee High School, but following graduation. Doug has been named Washingtonian of the Day by Governor Jay Inslee during a visit to Merrill's classroom while they were making alpine snow skis that the governor helped with. Andrew Metcalfe was awarded for his accomplishments as a serial entrepreneur. His ideas and companies have created local jobs and contributed to the growth of telecom infrastructure available in our region. As the leader behind 3 major companies, Andy works tirelessly in his businesses to make them go, always leading by example. I'm so excited to have these two gentlemen on air with me today. Stay tuned as I sit down with each of them to learn more about their work, their passions, and what's ahead for the future. We'll be right back. And we are back in the NCW Life studio with our first guest on today's episode about the Legacy Innovator Awards and the people behind those awards. So welcome, Doug Merrill, to the studio.
Well, thank you. It is a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so excited to have you on air. We were talking offline. I'm wearing a mask because I'm about to do some traveling, so I'm being hypersensitive. We live in this whole new world with COVID, and you as an educator, I feel like have really been on the front line of navigating this with students, which has been such a hardship really during this pandemic for our youth and our educators. So thank you for the work you do in education.
You're welcome.
You've touched the lives of thousands of students in our community. But if there happens to be someone who doesn't know you, let's start with introducing yourself.
Sure.
Yeah.
My name is Doug Merrill, and I born and raised here in Wenatchee, went to Lewis and Clark and Orchard, and graduated from Wenatchee High School in 1981, and so this has been home forever for me.
Yeah, and then came back to teach at the same high school you graduated from. Yes.
Which was strange, and I'm sure some of the teachers are going, they hired Doug? And so it's like, it was probably my algebra teacher that couldn't figure that one out.
Yeah.
And so it was a little strange going into the staff lounge and sitting next to those teachers.
Yeah. And then I'm sure you have now the next generation that you've taught who've come in to be educators back in the school system as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, very close to me. My son now is a science teacher at Foothills, and so he's been there for a few years. And I can tell lots of stories about kids of students that I now have. Well,
I love that it came full circle, stayed in the family line of business.
It did. Yes. My dad started it out. He was a chemistry teacher at Wenatchee High School back in the late 50s, and so it has carried on.
Yeah. A long line of education in your family. Let's talk about what you teach specifically.
Right. So I do the pre-engineering classes, and so specifically it's the CAD drafting, and then also the ski and snowboard manufacturing class. It's brand new this year.
Well, Doug, we recognize you. I think we have a photo to show the Tech Alliance recognized you last year for your legacy work in education. Here's a photo of us surprising you in the classroom midday about the Legacy Award. You've been an educator for several years here. Engineering, I imagine as a field, you could have just kept to drafting and kept kind of sterile, but you're really about hands-on learning.
I really am. It needs to be interesting. It needs to capture. I learned early on that I was not the teacher that was going to be having the kids on the edge of their seat because of my stories. And I always think of the old Red Green show where he would say, if the women don't find you handy, make sure let me do that again. if the women don't find you handsome, make
Yeah.
sure they find you handy. And so it's like, if the kids don't find you interesting, make sure you have something interesting to do. And so that's really very early on, 30 years ago, I figured that out. It was like, put something in front of them that they're excited to come to class about.
And you've got some really innovative projects. We're going to talk about the skiing in a minute. Let's talk about Go Baby Go.
Yeah.
Yes. What is that program?
Go Baby Go is a program where we take electric ride-on cars and we adapt them for students with special needs. And so we've done that now 4 times with students in our school district.
I think we have a photo now on screen for the audience.
Yes.
Yes.
And so this was the first crew. It's like, how do you do this? And so we thought we had it figured out, and we made the first kid cry, not this little guy, but it's just like we overwhelmed them. And so all of a sudden we had to start figuring out, how do you work with little kids? And so I had these big, senior boys and girls, and they were like, hey, let's help. I want to help. I want to help. And it's just like, we figured a lot of things on the fly. And but it's a program that was developed back in University of Delaware, and they take their physical and occupational therapists, connect them with their engineering teachers, and then how do you adapt an electric ride-on car for independent mobility? And that was the big thing of Cole Galloway. He just said, we've got to get these kids independently moving. And he puts kids in electric cars that are in special needs, but they've never walked, but he'll put them into a car and they start moving around. And the cognitive explosion that happens in their thinking process is just amazing. And suddenly they all of a sudden have a cause and effect. Oh, I bumped into something. I liked it, or no, that hurt. And so it's really powerful for the kids to do that. And so working with the PTs and OTs in our school district, Hannah, Lindsay, Katie at Lincoln, it's like we work together as a team, and we look at what are the needs of the child. And so one time it was the little girl, she wasn't using her right side much. And so I took it back to the kids and I said, how do we get her right hand involved in driving a car? And so they said, well, and then I stopped talking and I just let them think and scratch their head. And so then it's like, well, what if we took the gas pedal off the ground and we put it up into a stick shift, and then she has to use her right hand if she wants to go? And so the therapist was thrilled, and it's like, oh, this is exactly what she needs to do, because it's this, hey, if you want to go, you have to work on what it is that you're struggling with. And so whether it's the little boy with spina bifida, other boys with other challenging needs that they might have, it's how do we adapt it specifically for them and what their needs are.
And I mean, this is the type of program that brings tears to your eyes. Seeing a special needs child have some accessibility in a new way is powerful. But for the youth who spent their year building it, what is,
Oh, it's really powerful. It's really powerful because they think, oh, we're going to make this really cool car, and we're going to deck it out, and we're going to put these little things on it. We're going to get the radio going and the MP3 player and the super cool decals and all of that. And then they go into it, and it's like they're taken aback because, oh, this is a real disability. You mean he's never going to walk again? And so what we're doing is we're creating something for this child that's going to make them mobile. And
it's not the flash of the radio or
it is not. It is not. And so it totally flips. And so the blessing that they thought they were going to give, all of a sudden they get back, and it's such a different way with this huge dose of empathy that comes on them.
Yeah, that is incredible. The students that that you have worked with have gone on to do some incredible things. I want to touch on. There's so many things we could go over with you today. I was like, I don't know how we're going to do this in 11 minutes, but let's switch into another program, also very hands-on, which is your ski program. Really innovative. Tell me more.
Sure. Well, it started out with kind of a DIY version that we had going. It would take the students the full semester to build a pair of skis or a snowboard, and they're fully customized and all that. So they were enjoying that whole process. But 5 years ago, I said, hey, can we up this to a new manufacturing program? And every year it was like, yes, great idea. No, we don't have funds. We don't have funds. We don't have funds. So finally, the perfect storm hit, and we were saving a lot of money during COVID. And so then we were able to shake it loose and buy this ski and snowboard lab. And it is fully set up so that in the classroom now, my students, in 3 weeks' time, 3 class periods, should have a set of skis or a snowboard.
Which is incredible when you think about taking that process down from a full year to 3 weeks and the production. And just this past year, what did you say, 12 pairs of skis and snowboard?
Yeah.
Like you were...
So right now we have 12 snowboards and 10 pairs of skis going. And so we're in process, and our supply chain issues, rose up in the situation where there was no one in the country that had base material. And so you couldn't buy it anywhere except for one place, and they were charging 5 times the normal price. So it was like prohibitive. So we finally and now we're 3 weeks to the end of the semester, and we have all these boards ready to go, and we just got our supplies in over break.
Another COVID impact, a supply chain issue. So Go Baby Go and the ski program both create these hands-on programs for youth to not only learn the engineering process, but also some lifelong skills like failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
I imagine they don't all work out.
Yes.
You have to learn failure, teamwork. Right. What is your hope for the youth that go through these programs and have these experience in your classrooms?
I think as far as the team and the story aspect of it, the human element of it, it is how do you work together? And it's like, it would be really easy for a student to go in and think of, I want to do this on the Go Baby Go project, or I want to do this for my skis. And it's really not set up that way. It's like, it's a manufacturing setup where in the ski lab, the students are working together, and they may be building on someone else's ski. And so then that person's always going, how are you doing on my ski? So there's this, hey, trust me. I want you to trust me, and I'm gonna make you the best board ever. And so there's that element of it. And then we talk about the other component is in the manufacturing part of it. We have lean manufacturing, and lean manufacturing is a big deal around the valley, where they come into a station, they're working, all of their tools are there. They're not running across the shop to go find a tool. Everything's right there. And the people that they're working together, they're all right there. And so it's making the fewest moves possible to finish your product.
And those are skills that both the technical skills and, like you talked about, the soft skills that they're going to be using out of the classroom and for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Doug, it's been so fun to have you on air. You do such incredible work. I want to thank you. There's more we wanted to go into, so we're going to have you back on air to talk about what's next for you at the STEM program, STEM Engineering at Wenatchee High School. But thank you again for joining us. And for our guests, we have one more Legacy Innovator to bring on air, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Networked. And our second segment here today, I'm so excited to introduce Andy Metcalfe with Native Network. He is one of our Legacy Innovator Award winners for Entrepreneurship. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I can't believe I've been doing this for a few years and you haven't been on, so I'm really excited about this opportunity to have you share a bit about yourself and your company. Okay, I'd love to start there with, tell us a little bit about your background for those in the community who may not be familiar with you.
Okay, great. I'm surprised you haven't caught me, so I'm traveling normally about 200 days a year. So.
I know. So I finally snagged you at the right time. Yes.
Yeah. So what was the question? Sorry.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about your background.
Oh, okay. So my background is engineering, technical from, almost from day one. Went into the Marine Corps early on. And was able to get into a technical field, aircraft, avionics, which was a launching point for me there, and enabled me to get my engineering degree. A lot of the work I did in the Marine Corps was high-level engineering. I transferred to Southern Illinois University, where I graduated with my degree. And so after leaving the military, joined Boeing, well, there was a brief stint with a microwave company,
Yeah.
but joined Boeing, 7 years, had a fantastic time working with them. I worked on Air Force One, the avionics package for that when it was first coming out. There was 2 of those aircraft, and that was great. And then moved into the military division, a little bit of work in what they call the black hole. So very top secret.
So, yeah.
And then a couple of military programs, submarine communications aircraft, and the big one was the AWACS program, which is airborne warning and control, which I traveled all over the world with that program. So spent a lot of time in Europe, 2 years, in fact, in Europe, as the liaison for that program when the French and the British bought that airframe. So there was a gap in the construction of those aircraft about 93, and took that opportunity to move home. So we're both my wife and I are from OMAC, and so we, have a lot of vested interest in the North Central Washington. And but as you know, there's not a whole lot going on in OMAC from a technology standpoint, or there wasn't at that point. There is a lot more now. So we landed in Wenatchee and started working with the cellular company here. Ended up building up a lot of folks probably remember the Cellular One brand. We built that network from here to the Canadian border and over to Spokane, and very successfully operated that for many years. We were able to had a piece of that business. We were able to sell that and start a company called Northwest Telephone, which was a competitive local exchange carrier, and we're very successful there. Original plan was to build connectivity to homes and businesses and internet, voice and data. We ended up, during the .com bomb, if you remember, 2001, 2002, retooled our company to become a wholesale company. So we ended up leveraging the cellular contacts that we built during the late 90s, and built a 1,800-mile fiber optic network throughout the Northwest, serving primarily transport from big metro areas back out into the more rural areas. So most of my career has been focused in rural areas and building those out. And
that infrastructure has really created an asset across the region. I mean, the work you've done with Cellular One and Northwest Telephone, that's infrastructure that's being used by all of us now in these communities. Yeah, so absolutely. Thank you for that service that you've provided, because it's one of the things that keeps us competitive and kind of our rural connection.
That was the base, kind of the base. Obviously, much more is being built, in the last 10 years or so, but that was kind of the foundation for that, towers and fiber networks.
And on screen here, you were recently awarded the Legacy Award in Entrepreneurship, because following Cellular One and Northwest Telephone, you started another company now, Native Network. So let's talk a little bit about Native Network.
Great.
What is Native Network?
So Native Network is a company focused on helping Native Americans. So my heritage is Native American. I grew up in OMAC on the Colville Reservation there. So I had a very vested interest in Native heritage. Also, throughout the work we've done in the Pacific Northwest, we interacted with many tribes, and we can see that they were having difficulty, just getting basic services, telecom services out there. So after I sold Northwest Telephone, there was a gap where I did a lot of consulting around the world, and was wrapping that up because I was, traveling, way too much, and came home, started a little firm pre Native Network, was a little consulting firm that was helping and called upon by the tribes to help figure out how to build these telecom networks. And at that time we got, inquiries from several tribes around the Pacific Northwest, and had the brainchild to, say, this is great. There's so much more we can do for the tribes, and show them how to build their networks, operate their networks, make them sustainable, and be able to then hopefully link together and for the benefit of all tribes.
And so you talked about, we're seeing on screen here some of the pictures from your travels at tribal conferences. You're really on the ground, not just in Wenatchee or North Central Washington, but across the United States, helping tribal communities.
Yeah.
Why, you spoke about it just briefly, but tell me about the digital divide and, the impact on tribal communities.
Yeah, absolutely. So the work we did in rural markets, there's always the digital divide, and that's, the haves and have-nots for broadband for them primarily. And so we've been faced with this, almost the entire career, but it's even, greater need for the tribes, right? So they were bypassed many times by the larger carriers, wasn't worth the money to go build out in these very remote areas. So they ended up getting, substandard systems. And, we've gone into many reservations where they were operating their whole tribe on just a couple of DSL connections. Mm-hmm. And as you know, that's a difficult thing to do at best, especially when you're running, servers for, healthcare and all
right.
that stuff. Imagine that. So, we were able to help them very quickly bring in some, via wireless technology, bring in, a lot of bandwidth. And, they were able to leverage that and build out, networks to the home and get people online. And it was awesome. And so, after forming a native network, my idea was to connect as many tribes as I could, and that would give them the power. There's a law called Metcalfe's law. It's not about me, but basically the more nodes or networks that are linked together, the more value that network has. So if you can connect folks together, they have needs that the other tribes don't. Maybe one provides this service, the other one needs it. Data centers are a great example of that. Yeah. If I have all my data stored on my reservation and it gets wiped out, right, what happens? So, and they were uncomfortable sharing data, off reservation. So we were able to help them, go from tribe to tribe to data centers geographically diverse. So that's a solution. There's also banking, and they're big in gaming and connecting all those gaming networks together. Yeah. There was a big push and some federal money that was available to help this out. So we took our experience and went in and built wireless networks for these folks to get them on very quickly on net and solved a lot of problems for many tribes. And then with the foresight to then build fiber networks in the future is where we are now, and to connect those folks up. So getting a 25 meg connection is a godsend to these kinds of. We're very fortunate here in the Valley, and 100 megabit or a gigabit connection to your house. So we don't see that as a huge problem for us. I can run 20 Zoom meetings if I want, but can you imagine not being able to do even one? Telemedicine was a huge problem. Just the education factor and all that. So that's really the digital divide, is between I've got a broadband connection that works and I've got a broadband connection that doesn't work, or I don't have one. And
in our economy and in our world, that accessibility, like you said, it impacts all areas of life.
Absolutely.
now. And so, well, Andy, thank you for the work that you do. I mean, and Native Network is really you're creating social impact and helping empower tribes to be connected. I would love to have you back here in a couple months to hear where you've been next out on the road all the time. But since we do have to wrap up, I want to conclude by just saying thank you. It's been such a pleasure to share with our audience a little bit more about what Native Network does.
NCW Tech Alliance has served as our regional hub for technology innovation. As a 501c3, their nonprofit mission is to connect people and technology resources to create a thriving community. You can network with the team and guests from today's show by visiting them at www.ncwtech.org.